Hello, it is Tuesday night in Los Angeles. Welcome to Mainstream Metaphysics.
Yeah, all right. Here we are.
We have a live studio audience here in the house at the Newmont Center. And thrilled to have you. Thanks for coming.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. It is Tuesday night. It's 7 o'clock, which means you're watching Mainstream Metaphysics on LA Talk Radio exclusively. Is my lovely wife, Audrey.
Hello.
And I am Nick Newmont. And if you haven't watched us yet or guessed by now, we are a metaphysical alternative healing therapeutic institution, and we are always on the cutting edge of techniques. We are innovators in the healing and therapeutic industry. We don't copy, we create here. And, you know, when there's always new problems that are coming up, there's always new forms of issues that go on with the psyche. It's 2020. We've seen a lot of stuff come up this year that has never happened before, at least not in our lifetimes. And so we've had to figure out how to navigate, you know, this for people. And so, you know, we're always thinking ahead of the curve, right?
Always thinking.
Always thinking. For the future, if you would like to be a guest on Mainstream Metaphysics in studio here at the Newmont Center, please let us know. We allow for up to 12 people. That way we can safely keep everyone, you know, comfortable within their preferred choice of social, I call it unsocial distancing.
Yeah.
But we do the right thing. So let us know if you'd like to come and watch the show. And before we move forward, I'd like to say thank you to everyone that watched last week. The kind comments that we got about having our daughter Serena on the show, not just about Serena, but the things that Serena was saying and how legitimately and seriously grown adults took her opinion and how they felt that Serena genuinely represented the opinion of many youth out there. And that's really important because, you know, the old saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. You know, the youth learn from experience, and experience learns from the new ideas and the innovations of youth. So, you know, that was awesome that, you know, that.
And if people want to have her back in again, you know what, let us know and we can bring her back on, and maybe we could even persuade our other two to join as well.
You never know. Now, going forward, we have some exciting things happening here at the Newmont Center. First thing is this coming Sunday, October 4th, Gary Stewart will be here. Well, you know, we had to cancel the event. He wasn't feeling well. Gary was our guest a couple weeks ago, you know, here on the show. Gary will be here at the Newmont Center this coming Sunday morning, October 4th. If you're interested in attending, please get back to us via either one of our emails, anewmont@gmail.com and newmont@gmail.com. Or Kirby, you're our favorite viewer on the show. Hi, Kirby.
Everybody else is going to get jealous.
That's all right. It brings the ratings up. Everyone should watch.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Kirby's calling, or Kirby's watching from Pennsylvania.
Yep,
Where
exactly.
Nick is from.
Or wherever he's working. Could be Kentucky, could be Ohio. Also, if you want to call our center and get in touch with us if you have questions about what we do on the show or tickets to Gary's event on Sunday, the center's number is 818-865-8770. So then, okay, and it gets even better. Next, I got persuaded to do this by my strong arm here. Next, and you'd want to be in studio guest next week, because Merlin will be channeling next Tuesday night. And then on Tuesday, October 13th, which is Audrey's birthday, that's right. Our guest is an awesome, well-known guest, Carolyn Hennessy. And Carolyn is a well-known actress, voiceover artist, and does this process that's called hoodoo. It's not voodoo. It is a spiritual practice that she's going to share with us. And we are really privileged to have Carolyn Hennessy come on this show and be our guest. So make sure you watch October 13th. And everybody has to sing to Audrey. So we want a big in-studio audience on the night of the 13th. Not the October 20th when it's my birthday, October 13th. When it's Audrey's
We're a week
birthday.
apart from each other on our
We are.
birthdays.
We are. So yes, exciting things happening here at the Newmont Center.
Mhm.
And deeper into October, we have another class, but I'll talk about that class next week.
Mhm.
The class that's coming on the 24th, when it has to do with, the students in the healing realm. And by the way, I want to acknowledge, there's a lot of opportunities here at the Newmont Center. When people come through our programs, the idea is for them to be able to develop a career of their own. And the last group of graduates have done extremely well. And, we teach how to go out. Once you serve your apprenticeship, we teach how to go out and cleanse and bless properties via the pentagram ritual. And one of those recent graduates is out there doing the work after serving on a couple jobs with me. So that is really cool. Kudos. Yes, you can develop a career by attending the classes that we
Absolutely.
teach here. And that's the idea. They're not exercises in futility. They are real learning occupational opportunities. So if you're interested in classes here, please let us know. And the other thing I want to say is that the new group, the freshman class that just started a few weeks ago, is one of the most talented groups that I've ever seen come through. And I don't mean an individual. I mean the whole group. They are talented. And I'm really thrilled to have such awesome people come through and, taking alternative healing classes
Right.
here. Well, that was a mouthful. Do you want to say anything before I
just wanted to say yet again, am I wearing a beautiful piece from our Lauren Grant?
Yes.
Still having her beautiful work here. It's gorgeous. So
It is.
just
Yeah,
wanted
that's
to
beautiful.
point it out. Serena made me wear this one.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's blinding, depending on the way you turn.
It's got pyrite in it. It's really cool. At any
Yes.
rate, that's all I wanted to say. I've got different things that we've got going on here. Actually, one thing I would like to say, we're restarting our think tank mastermind that we used to have. And we have a whole team of experts that we work with that are just amazing people. A lot of holistic healers, a lot of just different people in some way, shape, or form. They're great for the mind. They're great for the body. They're great for the soul, the heart. And what we do is we bring them all together and we create this community with them. And so a part of it is networking and a part of it is brainstorming together on how can we be better for the community. And then we brainstorm on, how can we be better with each other? And it's a really great group of people. It's going to be here on the 9th. And on the 10th is our anniversary for here. We'll have been in this location since 10/10/10 at 10/10.
Right. Yeah. So we're 10 years,
And we're now
in
10
this
years.
building. In this building. Yes. Thank you. Where do the
that's-
years go? Right.
That's my little bit of announcements, but I want to get to what we're really talking about today, and that is Nick doing his predictive work with the astrology and possibly numerology.
And starting with numerology.
Yeah, so all
yes.
of this interesting stuff with the presidential election coming up and just
And thank you for
Thanks.
tuning in at this point. I don't know. We didn't watch the debate earlier. Don't know what's going on with that. And if it's over, fine. If it's not over and you're watching us, thank you. We appreciate you tuning in and spending time with us.
yeah, we'll be watching it afterwards.
Now, when I do these views on the numerology and astrology, it is simply not an opinion that I have about these individuals. I do not play favorites. In fact, if you'd like to know the truth, Audrey and I are registered as nonpartisan voters. We don't sit on either side of the fence. We step back and look at the fence
Yep.
and what's going on. So as I go through this process, please don't assume that I'm saying something one way or the other or swaying anybody one way or the other.
This is just predictive, right?
It is just simply the astrology and the numerology of Donald Trump and Joe Biden, where things are now and where things will be on the day of the election. And the other thing that's really important is to actually look at the chart of the United States of America on the day of the election.
Yeah.
So doing astrology charts is extremely complex. There are so many different things that we have to look at, including going back to the natal chart, which is the original personality of these individuals, and then where the planets are at that point in time, and I mean from now, because the debates are coming up and people are forming opinions, and public opinion, which leads to public vote, is who elects. Psychics don't elect presidents. We don't, all right? We get our own, objective opinions about things, but by the way, to say this, the higher percentage of psychics, astrologers 4 years ago had Hillary Clinton winning. Okay, so are there a certain amount of flaws in the system? Sure, there are, and there are so many different things to look at. So when I read what other astrologers say, because I'm very interested, there are so many components in a chart that you can look at, aspect after aspect after aspect. And some astrologers pick out certain things and put more focus on those things. And other astrologers will look at, different components, house placement, planet placement, retrogrades. We have to talk about that tonight because the day of the election is going to be a real S show. Trust me on that. And my Facebook followers know what I've been writing, over the last few days and with Mars retrograde. So anyway, let's get into this. And
it's interesting as I'm looking at the charts, they're so completely different what these things are you're looking at. This one's all on to that side, and it's fascinating.
Yeah, they are different. So the first thing is we'll start with the incumbent, President Trump. President Trump numerologically is a 40/22 personality. And whenever you see the numbers that are master challenges, that are variations of 11, meaning 11, 22, 33, it's a different kind of vibration that they aspire to. And people who are 22s, look at things from a bigger global perspective. They want to do big things. And if I gave you a list, or anyone that has my book would go to the back of the book and see all the famous people that are 22s, you would understand that has a lot to do with everything.
Mm-hmm.
So he's come into the world to do big things, and he's a 40/22, which means no matter what he does, he lives with a lot of pressure. Okay?
I think it looks like he thrives on it.
He may, but the number 40 is extremely stressful. It means you carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. Now, Joe Biden is a 47/2, and he was the vice president. He has held public offices before, and a person who is a 47 has structured beliefs in a traditional way. And 7 means that they're also they're open-minded to other things too. So Joe Biden is a blend of the past and the future in his beliefs. The thing is that he is a number 2. And when people learn how to do numerology the right way, you don't automatically, and I have one of my students sitting in this audience tonight, you don't automatically add 4 and 7, creating 11. You have to do the numerology the full longhand way. And when you do that, it's not an 11, he's a 2, which means that the 2 personality has a tendency to defer, all right, and let someone else go ahead of them. So the first part of that numerologically is that he's not necessarily a leader. He's a number 2 also means that he allows his emotions to get deeply involved in what he does. All right. The people who are a number 2 do well when they're in rhythm. Okay. Their biorhythms either work very well or they get knocked off.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, when we look at them, where we are now, as of Joe Biden's birthday, by the way, is November 20th. And so he's still in his last year cycle, which puts him in a 43-7 year. And 43-7 means that he sort of keeps people at an arm's length. All right. He's got a lot on his mind. But 43 means that he has the ability to balance left brain business things and also the social side of things. But 43 is sort of a distancing, sort of a leave me alone.
Mhm.
All right. I need my space. Now, after his birthday, November 20th, then he goes into a 35-8, which is a whole different meaning, but we need to focus on where he is now until the election.
Mhm.
Donald Trump's birthday is June 14th. He's in a 24/6 year since his birthday. So that's only 3.5 months ago that he's gone into that, which means that there is more of he cares more. Okay. Before his birthday, he was in a 5-year, which means he was changeable, sort of shifting, going back and forth, not knowing exactly where he stood. So now if the election would have been before his birthday, I would have said at that point, he probably wouldn't have cared at all. Since he's in a 6-year, what it looks like is he cares. All right. I mean, and what I mean is caring enough to actually run is what I mean by that.
Mhm.
But 6 is humanitarianism. When we get into the month of November, as we're still in September, then what happens is Joe Biden goes into a 54/9 year, which means that he's in a cycle that month of November where he's into changing the structure of things and bringing things to completion. Now, what's really important to know is that in October, which begins this week, Joe Biden's month cycle is 53/8, which is the cycle that he would go into after his birthday. So what we're going to see in October is sort of the reverse of what he'll be like when his birthday coming up. And so he's in October, he's going to make a very powerful kind of surge.
Mhm.
All right. Now, Donald Trump, when we get into November, goes into a 35/8 month. Now, this is a very important numerological alignment. So we have, let me make sure. No, that's November. Hold on here. Let me say this correctly. So in October, then President Trump goes into a 34/7. All right. And that means that he's, for some reason, sort of backpedaling a little bit, but people are coming toward him. All right. In other words, it's sort of a passive ploy. All right. It's a game that he's playing. It's a head game.
You can see that.
Now, when we go into, in other words, Joe Biden in October is going to be gung-ho, okay? Donald Trump is going to do this backpedaling, all right? It's almost like he's like laying a trap or something like that. Okay, because 7 has to do with the head. Now, when we go into November, then Trump goes into a 35-8, which means the election is November 3rd. So there's only 3 days, but it's like on November 1st, it's like the 12th round of a fight, and he comes out swinging. I mean, there's a lot of bizarre stuff in the astrology and the numerology in this. I'm telling you,
It's a lot to keep track of.
I have
isn't
been
it?
pouring through this, for several days before doing this tonight, because there's so much to talk about, and it's so easy to miss things.
Mhm.
It really is. So when we get into November, then Joe Biden is in the 54-9, which means that he's sort of at the end of the road. In other words, if Joe wins, then what's going to happen is he will work on changing the structure of things and the foundation of things. If he loses because it's a 9, then what will happen is he probably will say that he's done with politics. I mean, it's so extreme.
Mhm.
Then when we get to the election day, and this is really huge, on November the 3rd, and you have to add 3 into the month of November, which I said is a 54-9. It's like people need to be at home, like as keeping score of what I'm saying. Then Joe is in a 57-3 day. Well, I do my homework on this. 57 means changing your mind and telling a different story. It can be being scatterbrained. If you read my book and how I describe 57-3, but the ironic thing is 57-3 is the birth path number of Hillary Clinton. So when on the day of the election, what can happen is that he can come out saying things and people are saying, well, what's Joe talking about? It's election day. Now, when we get into Trump on election day, he's in a 38-11, which means he's very visible. 11 is charismatic.
Mhm.
All right. So now Joe is in a 57-3. 3 means he has a lot to say. Okay. And President Trump is in 38-11, which means that people are in support. But when you're in an 11 day, it's a lot of pressure also.
I would imagine
Okay.
that would be one of the most pressure-filled days in
So-
anybody's life.
So it's fascinating. Look, it's not just the election day. It's going to be fascinating to see how they actually operate, and not just toward each other. These are people. And one thing I do want to point out, and I thought about this tonight, these are people. And I know that I listen to what people say, and I read what people write on social media, and it doesn't matter if they're presidential candidates or athletes or people in the entertainment industry. They are people. And sometimes the viewing audience just takes shots at people as if they're like, crash test dummies. These are real people. And I want everyone to respect that, no matter who you're for. And sometimes I read things where psychics will arbitrarily put predictions out about people and so on and so forth. And those people are not necessarily their clients. Well, I know the way things are written, people, and they just write that this is going to happen, that's going to happen. Let's have a little compassion here about when we talk about these people, because, when someone is sitting with me and I'm doing a reading for them, I really care about what I'm saying. And sometimes you do have to give challenging news or bad news, or sometimes you give a lot of good news. But we want to talk about these people as if they were sitting here, not talking at them like we're taking pot shots at them.
I know.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's really important.
that is.
And that's why, although I've been invited many times, I never, as a psychic, would write for the tabloids and make those predictions because I felt that the ethics were compromised.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, I'm down off my
The
soapbox.
reasons I married you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So now when the election. All right. So as I said last week, and this is a posture for all of us, that we started to feel the effect of Mercury retrograde. We know Mercury doesn't go retrograde till October 14th, but the shadow period has already started. And this means that people will change their mind. People are very open. Well, this one said that. I like what he has to say. What this one said that. No, I like what he had to say. That's what's going to happen with Mercury retrograde. People are going to go back and forth. They're going to use that phrase. They're going to waffle. All right. And then as we get to the day of the election and out here on the West Coast, it's like 9:40 in the morning. Mercury goes direct on the day of the election, which is really going to mess things up because one, it can mess with any kind of electronic voting. It can mess with mail-in, okay? And it also means that when people go all that period with Mercury and retrograde and thinking, oh, that's the way I'm going to vote, they would actually go in to the voting booth and go, nope, I'm going to vote that way. So people could say in rallies and things like that, I guess now the rallies have to be virtual, do I have your vote? Yes. And they go in and they vote the other way.
So I guess the polls aren't going to matter so much.
Now I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about that. That's in their charts about the polls.
All right.
Okay. Audrey's psychic too. She anticipates what I'm going to say. I finish her statements. I'm a reverse psychic. All right. So the other thing, and I had to do a lot of research on this, Mars is going to be retrograde on the day of the election. And that's going to bring out a lot of aggression. Now, I did my best to research the last time that Mars was retrograde on the day of an election or during the time of the election. And I went through my ephemeris, which is planets. I went to the beginning of the 20th century, and it has not occurred. All right. So I would have to do more research into the 1800s and late 1700s to see if there was ever a Mars retrograde on the day of the election. Okay. Now, the other thing is when Mercury is retrograde and going direct on the day of the election, it's in the sign of Libra, which means that, look, we all know Librans can't make up their minds. Okay.
Is that for Biden's chart?
That's for anybody's chart.
All right.
We one of our audience members is a Libra. Yeah. Librans, we Librans, I always say, don't take a Libra to Baskin Robbins because they're never going to make up their mind. It's just too many choices. But with Mercury in Libra on turning direct, people will change their mind. Absolutely. They say, I want chocolate, I want chocolate, I want chocolate. They go in and they get pistachio. It's going to happen. Now, the Mars retrograde, Mars turns retrograde every other year. It doesn't happen every year. And for those of you watching and viewing, when Mars goes retrograde, it does have a tendency to cause hotter temperatures. And it is retrograde into deep in November 14th, I believe. It started retrograde on September the 9th. But Mars retrograde is also like reverse fire, anti-fire. So it may be warmer outside, but we also may see more rain come in unexpectedly with the Mars retrograde, which I don't think anyone will, argue with that. But the issue with Mars retrograde, and I put a huge post on Facebook yesterday, I believe, and it's going to bring out a lot of passive aggressive behavior. So no matter who is elected, there's going to be arguments, there's going to be fights, there's going to be people in the streets. You can bet on it, all right? Because of Mars retrograde. And it's not something that you mess with. It's not something you assume that it's just going to be okay, because of all things, it's in its home sign of Aries. So we have the planet of the god of war in the sign of the god of war. And it will have a lot to do, because it's retrograde, people being upset about things from the past. It's going to bring up old stuff that people are just upset about. So that's that first part I want to make clear. It doesn't matter who gets elected, because people are just going to be unhappy.
So that's another part of being prepared with having this information.
Yep. And when Mars is retrograde, maybe projects don't happen as fast, but Mars retrograde really calls for calm, chill. All right. We have to make sure we are not overly reactive during Mars retrograde, which we're in since September 9th. It makes people hot-headed and resentful.
So armed with this information, all of you light workers out there, all of you people that know how to be calm in chaos, that's going to be a time we're all called to hold this in the highest.
Exactly. Now, even though I couldn't find, going back to the beginning of the 20th century, when Mars was retrograde at the time of an election, in 1928, it did turn retrograde in November, about 10 days after the election, which means the effects of Mars retrograde were starting to kick in. And in that election, Herbert Hoover won in a landslide over Al Smith. Okay. So, and that was a Republican over Democrat at that time. Okay.
Take a breath. That's a lot of information.
Yeah, fiction and fact from Nick's Almanac. So yeah, there's a lot that's going on. Now, we have talked on this show many times about the retrograde planets that have been causing problems in business and finance and economics. Jupiter did go direct on September the 12th, and Saturn went direct last night, 10-something p.m. on the West Coast.
Yay.
And Pluto goes direct this Sunday morning, 6-something in the morning. I don't have it in front of me on the West Coast, 9-something in the morning on the East Coast. And the reason that's important is because in the chart of the United States of America, the second house is the house of money, finance, possessions, intrinsic values. Those planets, as we get into election day, are all moving forward. And that means that the country, the focus of the country is going to be a lot about economics. It's not going to be about COVID or what went right or what went wrong. It's going to be about economics. And the interesting thing is that Joe Biden, he has the same house layout as the United States of America. He's a Sagittarius rising, like the chart of the United States. And so those planets that I'm speaking of, Jupiter, Pluto, Saturn in Capricorn at the moment, are all in his second house, which means that a lot of his platform is going to be about economics, all right, and changing the structure of things economically, all right. Now, it's fascinating that also Joe Biden is a Scorpio. He's got 4 planets in Scorpio. I'm going to talk about that in a second, but there's been more presidents in the sign of Scorpio than any other sign.
Huh.
And the second most are Aquarians.
Really?
Yep.
That's interesting.
So there's sort of a history of odds that are on his side. However,
Everybody just went, what? Biden?
but he has those planets in Scorpio in the 12th house, which means there is a subversive side to him. He has an undercurrent that's going on all the time. So what you say, because Scorpio is the most covert sign in the zodiac, and the 12th house I call, when I teach astrology, the dungeon of the zodiac, because the 12th house is secret, sorrow, self-undoing institutions, karma, addictions. It's your mental health. So with Joe Biden, what you see is not what you get. That's something to remember. And because the sun, which is the self-expression, and Mercury, which is communication and intellect, is in the 12th house, that means that chances are he will say one thing and do another. Okay? So we watch that. His moon is in the sign of Taurus, which means that he's sweet, friendly, but he definitely has a stubborn side, an uncompromising side. His rising sign is Sagittarius. Look, the Sagittarius are the optimists of the zodiac. They're fun, they're playful, they're very Peter Pan, all right? So while he's got all this Scorpio hidden in the dungeon, that Sagittarius is the part of him that wins people over, all right? Sagittarians are normally fun people, okay? But they are also the orators of the zodiac. And if there's any sign, and if you are a Sagittarian, please don't take this personally. Sagittarians have a tendency to talk too much. Sagittarians have to know when to say what they mean and then stop. All right? And we have a lot of Sagittarians in our
I'm looking
family.
at one in the audience right now.
So anyway, it's not a personal thing in any way, shape, or form. Now, the other thing about Joe Biden's chart that's interesting, he's born with the planet Neptune, which is all about illusion, okay, in his house of career and reputation, the most public of the houses. So it means that he's kind of hard to figure out. And Neptune is sitting in almost a perfect inconjunct, which is a 150-degree angle toward his moon, which means that he's a very sensitive person. And if anyone gets under his skin, it affects him emotionally, and he has to learn how to adjust to what public opinion would be of him, whether that opinion is accurate or not. So he has to subscribe to sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me, because he is sensitive to that. So that's a bit about his natal chart. He does have Saturn in the 7th house, and which means that he does subscribe to a certain level of notoriety. He wants to be visible. Saturn in the 7th house means that he has a very realistic understanding of the legal system and how it works. So he knows the law, definitely. Now he's also born with the planet Uranus in the 6th house, which is physical health, opposing his ascendant. This means that when he gets too wired, too much nervous energy gets into him, it throws him off. Okay? I mean, he can be knocked off his game, with a chart like this. All right? Now, I'm not saying where the planets are yet, okay? I'm talking about their natal charts. All right. So, for a long time, Donald Trump, for many, many years, has had a very checkerboard reputation, depending on who you talk to. Well, in his 10th house of career and reputation, he's born with what's called an intercepted Gemini. Gemini does not rule the cusp of the 10th house nor the 11th. It's in the center of the 10th house. And when you're born with Gemini high in the sky, and he does have the sun in Gemini, because he is a Gemini in the 10th house, Uranus in the 10th house, and the north node of the moon, where you're supposed to pay attention where you're going in Gemini in the 10th house, along with intercepted Gemini, it means you're a target. Your reputation is always on the line. Okay. All right. And see, wherever you have intercepted planets in your chart, those are problematic areas in your chart. Most people don't have intercepted signs. It's a smaller percentage, but he does have to be careful. And see, on the day of the election, I am going to touch on this. The moon is in Gemini that day, sitting right on the north node of the moon, which means everything about him is like all cards are on the table that day with him. I mean, there's not going to be any guessing. On that day, and the chart was run on the day of the election, people are either going to love him or hate him. There is no in between. There's no gray area that day. Okay, now the rest of his chart, look, he is a Leo rising, which means that he's not going to back down from anyone. Leos are the kings and queens of the zodiac. They are, and they're not going to compromise boundaries. But you have to remember, with Leos, and for all you Leos out there, sorry, I'm going to say this, with some Leos, they believe their defecation is not aromatic. All right? So, you have to own up to what you do when you're a Leo, right or wrong.
Yep.
And that's
one thing he doesn't do.
He does not do that. And also, the thing about when I say Leos are the kings and queens of the zodiac, for someone to rule, to be a ruler, you first have to know how to serve. Okay? And I don't know that he's ever served. All right. So that's a challenge. And when that Leonian part of him comes out, along with the intercepted Gemini, that is, even when he does good things, that's what rubs people the wrong way, because it becomes this personality that's bigger than life, and as you say, basically doesn't admit to the faults. See, and the other thing is, he has a Sagittarian moon. Sag moon men never grow up. They are the Peter Pans. They're emotionally boys throughout their life. They do get to the point where they take on a level of responsibility, but there's always going to be a certain level of play with the Sag moon. Mm-hmm. And so there is this little kid that's in there. Now, his moon is almost in a perfect opposition to his sun. Technically, it's not quite a full moon, but it's 1 degree off. So he has very high visibility. But it's in his 4th house, which is his private life, which means that everybody knows his business.
Yep.
And that has a lot to do with his relationships with women. How many times has he been married?
Right.
Okay.
Hey, it's 7:44, just as a notice.
Thank you. All right. Now, all these planets that we've been talking about, that Jupiter, Pluto, Saturn, are all in his 5th house. And when we get to the day of the election, Saturn is opposing his Venus, which means that he's nitpicking a lot of things. At that point in time, when you understand Saturn opposing Venus in the house of relationship, the love you give to the love you receive, he may have something going on with Melania. That's something very stressful in there, or he's being nitpicked at the same time. Mm-hmm. As all of this is going on, the key to his chart at the time of the election is the Mars retrograde in the 8th house, which means he's trying to clean up money that's gone on with other entities on the time of the election. In other words, he's not so focused on the budget of the country as he's trying to correct things that have happened in big money, going back a long time. So when we look at this, the Joe Biden's chart is going to be about money and the present economic things that he wants to change. President Trump is going to be digging up stuff that will be more global, all right? and more about foreign economies and how our country interacts with foreign economies and what's supposed to be fixed by that. It's two complete agendas that are going to go on. The other thing is on the day of the election, in Joe Biden's chart, and I really looked at this, Saturn in the transits are forming almost a perfect opposition to Jupiter, and that's called a roadblock.
Biden?
In Biden's chart, yes. And so, but at the same by the same token, he's got Venus in the 10th house, which means there is a public appeal there. But there's something that he's going to face on the day of the election where he has to be very careful about what he says, about economics, because people would feel that, well, the plan that he has would just not work, and the public would not be in favor of what he wants to do. Now, who's going to win? You have to watch another show, because I'm not going to reveal that tonight. There's more to talk about. Oh, listen to the groans. That's right. There's a lot more to talk about. And you'll see as I talk about it in coming weeks, you'll see why there's a lot more to talk about. It's not so cut and dried. I will say this, and I'm going to say it like this. Whoever wins, it is not going to be a landslide. It is going to be very close. All right? There's no clear-cut advantage to either one.
Kirby says such a tease.
I know, I am a tease.
So then does that mean that we're going to talk about it a little bit more next week, and we're going to have Merlin?
No.
No?
Merlin will talk about things from his perspective next week. And then, as I said, on the 13th, we have Carolyn Hennessy. And on October 20th, my birthday, then I will talk more about this.
All right. So on Nick's birthday, we're going to hear more about this. But I have to say, some of that stuff that you were saying was very interesting. And it really sounds like they have, on a lot of levels, matched their charts, especially when you're talking about Biden being a 2 and being in a subservient position.
Right. Right.
That was interesting. By the way, Mr. Nicholas, the numerologist, this is his book, Numerology, and we have them here. You can go to NewmontRocksRetail.com, and we have them on there if you're interested.
Or if you do order, get in touch with me directly, and if you want to buy one, and that way I can sign it and send it to you, just like I did to Kirby, and he knows what I put in his book. Anyway, we've got to go. It is that time. Thanks so much for watching. A lot more to talk about, and you on the streets will be talking a lot, and I'll be watching what you write. And for those of you here, in the studio audience, thank you so much for coming. Appreciate it. Come back and see us
and
again.
If you want to come next week, let us know. We have room for 12 here.
Right.
With separate seating.
With Merlin. And anyway, Audrey, thank you as always. Love doing this with you. And remember, folks, be kind to each other. There's a lot going on out there. It's not just on paper in astrology. People are acting up. So take care of yourself. Take care of each other. And we will see you next week right back here on Tuesday night on Mainstream Metaphysics, LA Talk Radio.
And share with your friends. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
You're listening to Mainstream Metaphysics with Nick and Audrey Newmont, only on LA Talk.